Hello, everyone. I am so excited about this conversation tonight. My name is Rabbi Yisroel Bernath, and many of you know me. I am really excited to be here to talk about a topic that I have never spoken about and I don't know so much about. And I cannot think of two better people, really two and a half or three, we'll say three better people to be able to have this conversation with. So, without too much introduction, I'd like to welcome you to an incredibly special conversation this evening. I know that there's a certain magic in human connection. It's what brings meaning to our lives, it fills our hearts, and if we're lucky, it helps us find true love. It helps us find belonging. But for so many people, dating and navigating the social landscape of relationships, even making friends, it can feel really overwhelming. It can feel intimidating. And I've heard from so many of you that sometimes it's actually impossible. So today we have the honor of speaking with two experts in the art and the science of social connection. I'd like to welcome Jeremy and Ilana. Together, Jeremy and Ilana lead Social Life 360. Their job is to empower people, especially those who find socializing challenging, to develop the confidence and the skills to build meaningful relationships. Jeremy and Ilana are not just coaches, they're passionate advocates for those who feel overwhelmed, for those who feel misunderstood. So if you feel overwhelmed or misunderstood, if you feel overlooked, this is for you. If you feel like social anxiety, neurodiversity, other unique challenges are very difficult for you, if you want to feel more comfortable, more confident, more connected, this is a special evening for you. So I'd like to welcome Jeremy and Ilana. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to dive in.
I'm excited too. You probably can't hear it, but Mia is not so excited. And I think she probably has about 30. Oh, you can see the face. She has about 30 seconds left.
Oh, hello,
So,
Mia.
want to say hi to everybody?
Yeah, we didn't time naps so well. So
Let's dive in. Let's dive
Oh,
in. We have Alana for a couple minutes until Mia decides this is me and you.
okay. Let's get started. There is so much that I don't know about the world that you live in every single day. So I want to start from the beginning. Neurodivergent. I've heard this word thrown around these days. What does neurodivergent mean?
You start because you're not going to be here much longer. I
no,
can.
go ahead. Go ahead. What do you-
It's not a medical term. There's no official definition of neurodivergent. It literally means the way that your brain works diverges from the way other people's brains work. It's a term that's very popular with people on the spectrum. I hear a lot of people with ADHD use it, but it's not a medical term. There's no exact definition. It's a way that people describe themselves when they don't necessarily want to attach a label to themselves. Then you get the big philosophical question, is there, neurodivergent is sort of the opposite of neurotypical, right? You have divergent, you have typical. Is there really anything that's typical? Is there anyone that's really average? But that's a philosophy question maybe we won't get into tonight. That'll be like part two of this discussion.
Can you give me an example of to me, neurotypical, neurodivergent, these become words and sometimes almost meaningless. Like, give me an example of what would be something that would be neurodivergent and something that would be neurotypical.
Well, let's talk about why we're here, right? There are a lot of people in this world who go into a social setting and they know exactly what to do and exactly what to say, and they connect with people fairly easily, and people connect with them, and they walk out with phone numbers and friends and dates and the social aspect of their life, while maybe not easy, is not particularly challenging. Neurotypical. I would say the thing that unites the neurodivergent people in our lives particularly our clients in Social Life 360, their brains struggle with that social connection, right? They suffer from anxiety about going into social spaces. When they go into social spaces, they don't know necessarily who to approach, what to say, how to answer. Making that connection is just not super intuitive to a lot of neurodivergent people. And so, in our world, in the work that we do, when we think about neurodivergent, what we're thinking of is brain wiring that makes it harder to connect with another human being.
So people are struggling to make small talk. What are they struggling with? I mean, I can tell you, I walk into a social setting and I'm, very happy there. So I guess you would call me neurotypical because of that.
Perhaps, perhaps. As I said, it's not a medical science. So, we can all find ways that we're neurodivergent. I think we're all neurodivergent on some level, but I don't think that I think you have a certain facility with socializing that a lot of neurodivergent people probably wouldn't identify with.
Okay. That
So yeah, you asked like what's the small talk problem? I
right.
mean, imagine like walking into a social situation, right? And there's a group of people there, and you know that you went to that social situation because you wanted to meet folks there. But now you're in this room, there's a lot of sounds going on, a lot of lights going on, a lot of smells going on, a lot of people moving around, and you kind of freeze up, right? Like, what do I do?
Mm,
I think that's one of the first issues that people experience when they come to us, right? When people come to us and they say, "Hey, like we'd like to talk about working with you." One of the first problems they tell us about is, I have a lot of anxiety about going to a social space, and when I do, I kind of freeze up,
mm, wow.
and that's a big deal. And then, let's say you meet somebody. Let's say you start having a conversation with someone. That small talk doesn't come easily to a lot of neurodivergent people, right? That idea that someone's going to share an aspect of their life with me, a fact about their life with me, and I'm going to use that as a springboard to deeper conversation. That is not something that comes particularly easy to a lot of the people that we work with.
Wow. What are other struggles that people face when it comes to making friends and dating that you see?
I think the where to go is a big problem. The what, oh, we're losing her. Well,
We'll be back if she
See
comes.
you later.
See you later.
yeah, I think the where do I go and what do I do when I get there? And if I happen to get into a conversation with somebody, then what? Those are
Mm,
the biggies. And I imagine like, you Rabbi, you have a synagogue. Um, I imagine that some of the people who go to your synagogue are neurodivergent themselves. I know that after synagogue, you guys have, usually a luncheon or something like that. You see people socializing, and sometimes you see people connect, and sometimes you see you see that there's a complete lack of connection.
but
And yeah,
we try to lower the temperature. Like we purposely do that where it's just easy, it's free flowing. People who are not comfortable connecting can just connect in that space because it's safe and it's easy going. So what I'm interested in is, somebody asked in the comment that like when you start talking to someone, they're doing all the work and someone else is replying with three words out of their mouth. So that's really interesting to me. And how could you teach someone to be able to fairly, equally, like you and I are having a conversation right now
right.
and we're sharing the space. How do you teach that?
Yeah, so you actually bring up what we call in our program an SFA, a short factual answer. And one of kind of the hallmarks of of some aspects of neurodivergence is just this like this ability to answer things factually. How are you doing today? Great. Where are you from? I'm from New York. What do you do for a living? I'm a coach, right? We see a lot of neurodivergent people. I mean, a lot of people in general, but certainly a lot of neurodivergent people. They'll field a question, but they'll answer it with an SFA, short factual answer. And it's not wrong. A short factual answer isn't incorrect. The problem is that a short factual answer doesn't give a conversation anywhere to go,
Mm,
right? Like if you ask me where I'm from and I say New York, you know, now the burden goes back to you.
right.
You have to come up with another question or follow up or make something of that answer. And so one of the things that we teach in our program is the fact that, well, two things. One, a lot of the questions that you're going to hear in social settings are the same. So it makes a whole lot of sense to be prepared for them. And then number two, you can also have a whole lot of control of a conversation by asking questions that are meaningful to you. But if you do that, you also have to have a really good answer to that question, right? There's nothing kind of worse than asking a really good question and then someone boomerangs that back at you and they're like, "Oh, and what about you?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't know."
Right.
And that happens a lot, right? That's a lot of what we see with, people who are our clients or who want to be our clients. And so for us, the thing that we preach a lot is what we call mental library. Mental library is the idea that there are questions that you're going to be asked over and over in life. Prepare a good answer for them. There are questions that you can ask to have conversations about things that you want to talk about, but prepare an answer for them.
Right.
Like, Ilana and I talk about one of the things that really allowed us to connect when we first met. And in some ways, even like put us on that path to be married. We had that at some point, we had this initial conversation when we were strangers. And I'm sure she was like, "Where are you from?" And I could have said I'm from New York, right? Short factual answer, totally true. But I didn't. I said I'm
What
from a
did you
little
say?
known street in Upper Manhattan, and one thing that's really cool is that five generations of my family, well, back then it was four generations of my family, have lived on that street going back to 1940.
Hold on a second. Say that again.
I'm from a little known street in Upper Manhattan, and something really cool is that we go back to 1940 on that street. Four generations of my family have lived there.
You just
And you
made
know what,
yourself.
Rabbi?
Yes.
You know what? Her dad is from the same neighborhood.
No way.
Yeah, her dad is from the same neighborhood. And as we dove into our history, not only are her dad and my dad, not only did they grow up 2 blocks apart, but they actually went to the same high school at the same time. They didn't know each other, but they went to the same high school at the same time. And the only reason we were able to establish that beautiful connection about the intersection of our family history is because I didn't say I'm from New York. I had a mental library answer about where I'm from, and I used that mental library answer. And she could have taken that conversation a whole bunch of different ways, but where she took it is, where is this small street? And I said,
Uh,
Washington Heights. And she's like, my dad is from there. And
It's
boom,
it's
we had a
interesting to me
connection.
because I always say connection is similarity. Connection is not, people think opposites attract. Opposites don't attract. There's enough opposites. It's similarities that attract. And so what you did was New York is a really big place.
Sure
That's
is.
not a great answer when you're dating. But what you did was you created a similarity in your
Exactly.
answer.
Exactly. And I think where a lot of neurodivergent people get stuck is someone asks them, where are you from? And they interpret that question literally, as they are entitled to do. But when you interpret a question literally and you give a literal answer, what you end up with is an answer like I'm from New York. And that puts the burden back on you to figure out what's the next question? What's the next thing I'm going to say to this guy? And it becomes a little bit like an interview. You don't want to interview people, and no one wants to be interviewed. And those conversations quickly fizzle, right? They quickly become uninteresting, and that's it. And I think if you were to ask a lot of neurodivergent people, particularly people on the spectrum, is that your history? Do you identify with that? I bet a lot of people would say yes.
Wow. Wow.
I'd
Someone
be
just,
very
yeah.
curious to know, you run an organization. I'd be curious to know kind of what does neurodivergence look like in your synagogue?
Well, it's more than just, I mean, I'm setting up a lot of dates and I see it so often on dates where people are having a really hard time connecting.
Why? Why are they having a hard time connecting? When they come back to you and they say, "Rabbi, thank you for the date that you set me up on. I didn't feel a connection." What's the why?
Right. Um, Sorry, dealing with a few things here. What's the why? Um, it's a good question. I see a lot of different things. I've had so many different situations. I've had uh one situation like a young woman told me recently that I set her up on a date and the guy sent her his schedule and said, just fill yourself in.
Fascinating. But here's the thing, right? The neurodivergent brain, on the whole, is very logical. By the way, it's what I love about working with neurodivergent people. I love the logic. It makes so much sense that if you want to go on a date with me, take a look at my calendar and tell me what works for you. From a logical perspective, it makes so much sense. The problem is that that's running afoul of social norms, but it's probably a social norm that that person doesn't know about.
Mm, right. I love this idea of having canned answers that you know, because you're so right. So many of the same questions are going to come up over and over again. And so, like, you can answer it. You can say, I'm from New York, or you can give a whole wonderful answer. Like, we have someone here, named Laura, who just wrote a whole thing. This is where I'm from. This is who I am. This is, make something interesting and create connections, ways that people can connect with you and see you for just more than just, oh, this is where I'm from.
We're more than just the facts of our life.
Exactly.
Okay. There's a term. It's called stickiness, right? Facts aren't sticky. Stories are sticky. And so what Alon and I teach our clients is don't answer, tell a story. That's sticky. That's memorable. That gives the other person, the listener, something to grab onto that facts do not. Facts are not emotional. Connections are emotional, but facts are not. So if you want to get to a connection, you need something more emotional than just a fact.
Right. Getting a lot of really great questions. Someone just said, have your response be personal and welcoming versus just giving your calendar. Exactly. Exactly. Wow.
But I so appreciate the idea that, from a logical perspective, giving someone the calendar makes total sense. It makes total sense. In an ideal world, giving someone your calendar is exactly what you need to do to take the next step.
But that's not really exciting for a potential date.
Exactly.
Your date doesn't want to think that they're just another mark on your calendar. See when I
That's the
can fit
why.
you in.
That's the why. That's
Right.
the why behind the social norm that we don't do that.
Right. I want to lean into social anxiety. It's something that a lot of people experience. I hear about it a lot from
Yeah,
the
I'm gonna lean in. I'm gonna be very literal about that. I'm gonna lean into social anxiety.
is that neurodiverse that you lean when I say lean in, you're gonna actually lean in?
Not necessarily, but what, a lot of neurodivergent people, they interpret words literally and then have to understand what the idiom is.
Okay.
So,
So, okay, good. I'm not going to say lenient. I want to know more about
yeah.
social anxiety. It's something that a lot of people experience, and I think that it manifests differently for different people. So, how do you help people work through it in a way that feels authentic so that they're actually able to bring themselves and not be so nervous about it?
Well, I mean, let's start with the idea, first of all, that social anxiety is not a neurodivergent trait, right? It's a human trait shared
Mhm.
by a lot of people, regardless of their neurology. We also have neurodivergent people in our program who don't have social anxiety. They're like, send me in, right? So it's not a neurodivergent trait, but a lot of neurodivergent people, especially the ones who come to us, are very united in this feeling of like, oh my goodness, going into a social space is scary as heck. And I think that they're like, let's start with like two big drivers of that. Okay. Number one, you have spent your whole life being pushed into social spaces and people have not been kind to you. They've not connected with you. They've made you feel invisible and like garbage. If that's your history and that's your narrative, yeah, like every time you're thinking about going into social spaces, uh, my blood pressure would go up too,
Right,
right? Like the old idea, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and and expecting a different outcome.
right.
If
But
you've been going
that's
to
the nature of living in the world. You have no choice.
well, I think we're going to get off topic here, but I think it's kind of important, which is that, a lot of parents come to us and they say, my young adult has essentially opted out of the social world. What do I do about it?
Mm,
Right? You said, well, what choice do you have? I think a lot of people have exercised the choice to withdraw. And that's really scary for parents.
wow.
It's also not a great feeling for the adult who's withdrawn.
Right,
But it is the reality for a lot of people. And it's kind of hard to to say, oh, that's wrong. No one likes to fail at stuff. If you tried and you didn't get what you wanted over and over and over again, I don't blame you for there being a point in time where you're like, I don't really want to do this again. But the reason why Alana and I do what we do is because the way that neurodivergent kids and then adults have been taught to go out into the social world just hasn't been working. So, I've spent the last 15 years coming up with a better way. That's why we do what we do. Because if you want to change the narrative, if you want to have some hope that better is possible, you need to see a direct route from where you are now to where you want to go. Right? If you see a path forward and it looks like a path that's going to be successful, you're you can be inspired to take that path. But if it's just people kind of like trying to push you and say, just go out there, be social, be yourself, just introduce yourself. And you're like, I've been doing that for like 20, 30, 40 years. This doesn't work. And they're like, no, 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 just do it again. As
yeah,
my grandma would say, kish and tuchis. I don't want to do
exactly.
this.
Hey, that's not for the kids, but you're right.
That's what my grandma would say.
Yeah. But there's an absolute truth to this. I'm getting a lot of very similar questions that are coming in as you're talking.
Okay,
And it
let's hear
seems
it.
to be that a lot of people here are just not even they're asking questions about how you were talking to Ilana on your first date, like the small talk. The small talk seems to be completely overwhelming. I'm getting it. How do you create the commonality with someone else without having to go to the lowest denominator? How do I, have a simple yet powerful way to start and to sustain the conversation?
I love that question. It's literally the essence of our program, which is don't do small talk questions if you don't have to. Don't ask them. You're not in control of whether someone asks you small talk questions. You're in control of the answers you give, but
Yeah,
you
but you
don't have to ask small talk questions.
but if
You
someone
can
asks
start in the
you
middle of a conversation.
If someone asks you a small talk question and you don't answer, it's going to look weird.
Correct. You're not in control of what people ask you. If someone asks you a small talk question, I sure hope that you have a dynamic response in your mental library ready. If someone asks you, hey, where are you from? And you say, I'm from Montreal, you have already taken a step towards a conversation that's probably going to end pretty quickly,
Correct.
right? You can't stop someone from asking you where are you from, but you can make a choice not to say I'm from Montreal.
I
I'm
love
from New York.
I love this idea. Start in the middle of the conversation.
Start in the middle of the conversation.
I
You
love
can
it.
always, if you like each other, you can always circle back to to the small stuff. And that, by the way, includes your name. You don't need to start a conversation with your name.
Right.
If you enjoy the conversation, then you go back and say, by the way, I'm Jeremy. What's yours? I didn't catch your name. But you don't have to start at the beginning. A conversation doesn't need to be linear, starting with the least important stuff, working up to the most important stuff. Start in the middle of the conversation. Start with the good stuff. If the good stuff clicks, you can circle back around and ask them, what do you do for a living?
Wow. What about if you lack the ability to have expressive language, but you're really capable of receptive language?
I don't have a clue what that means, Rabbi.
So, which means you're having you're very good at like, receiving and listening, but not really good at making that conversation. Is there a value for somebody who is a really good listener but not as good of a talker?
I think there's an immense value. There's like an old saying, I don't know if it's Egyptian or whatever, right? The saying is talking is silver, listening is gold.
Mm,
You ever heard that one? Something like it?
that's great. Yeah,
Yeah, most people don't shut up.
right.
What?
On the gold. I do more listening.
Alana's here with me. She says
Bouncing me around.
Alana says she's the gold. She does the listening. There's an immense value in listening because most people don't shut up.
So how do you express that when you're maybe wanting to meet someone and say, I'm a really good listener? And even though I'm not talking so much, and maybe I'm giving what you called, the three-word answer. I forgot already the name of that of the three-word
SFA, short factual answer.
the short factual answer. But really, I'm really good I love listening. I love being present with you. I love sharing the space with you. I don't necessarily have to share it in communication. I can share it in just presence.
I mean, you basically said it. That's it. I'm going to give that a fancy name. We're going to call it self-disclosure, right? That's the fancy name for let me tell you what you're seeing so that I control my narrative and you're not making assumptions. But the way that you do it, you just did it.
Yeah, that's great.
Because that's what humans do, right? Humans are meaning making machines. Okay? Humans are meaning making machines. And what that means is that we look at the world and we come up with a narrative to explain what we're seeing. Because otherwise we don't understand the world and it scares the pants out off of us. So we
Absolutely.
look at the world and we make meaning out of it. And unfortunately, what that means is that when we talk to people, if they are different than us in some meaningful way, we are going to make meaning out of that difference. And that assumption is probably going to be wrong. It's probably going to be negative. And so what you're asking, Rabbi, is how do you counteract that?
Right.
And the way that you did it just now is beautiful. Spent 17 years as a teacher. One thing that I learned is that when you do parent-teacher conferences, you do what's called the sandwich. You tell parents, Johnny's great. Here's what he needs to change.
And he's great.
Johnny's great. And that's
Exactly.
kind of what you just did, right? That's kind of what self-disclosure is. Like, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I love learning all about you. I love listening to your life story. Just so you know, I'm more of a listener than a talker, but I'm really having a great time. Let's just keep going.
So I love this idea, but I'm thinking there's another issue here that's going
Okay.
to come up, and that is people say just be yourself, and I love the self-disclosure,
Whoa.
and this I always say just be yourself. But what if
Oh,
someone doesn't feel confident with who they are, how do they develop this? Like, I could do that, but what if you're not confident with who you are? How do you develop your social identity, if I can call it that?
I have so much to say about this. And I don't know which of the two big things I actually want to lead with. I'm going to lead with the less controversial one. And then I'm going to say something, then I'm going to say the controversial one.
Oh, darn.
I I took a college class where this young lady in my class, her dad wrote a book. Couldn't tell you what the name of the book was, but the idea was that there's no such thing as one unified self. We are different in different situations as humans. Okay? The Rabbi Bernath that's on the metaphorical bima on the pulpit is different than the Rabbi Bernath that's with his mom, is different than the Rabbi Bernath that's with Ilana and me, and is different than the Rabbi Bernath that shows up when Ilana's parents show up. There's no unified Rabbi Bernath. There's no unified Jeremy. There's no unified Ilana. There is just a person in a context. And as humans, we change depending on contexts. Okay. So let's start with the idea that just be yourself is different in different contexts. Okay. Now I'm going to get to the part which I think is sometimes a little bit controversial.
Waiting for the juice.
Here's the juice. Ilana and we teach our clients to show up as the best version of themselves. Okay. There's a difference between just be yourself, which is taken as an invitation to just show up. But if you want to connect with people, you usually have to show up as the best version of yourself. And this is for everybody. Like, Rabbi, if you were to tell me, like, just be yourself, you know what I'm doing? I'm showing up in my sweatpants that I've probably worn for 3 straight days with a shirt that has, a stain from Mia's, like spit.
Okay, that's way too much self-disclosure right there.
You know, I probably haven't slept, or at least, I mean, look, I've slept more than a lot, but I probably haven't slept very well. And so I'm going to show up a little bit surly. And, am I going to give you short factual answers? Yeah, sometimes. The
Well,
the Jeremy that can show up in a social space, if you give me the opportunity to just be the easiest version of myself, you're not going to want to be friends with that version of Jeremy. It's true. You're not. I don't want to be friends with that version of myself half the time.
why? Because it's not interesting?
It's not interesting. It's not friendly. It's not put together. I mean, let's talk about dating for a second. Let's talk about putting yourself together. One of the things that Alana and I really reflect on all the time is that dating is the act of two people seeing whether they want to be part of each other's lives. Okay? If the first time you meet me, I show up like a schlump in smelly sweatpants and a dirty t-shirt, you're going to look at me and you're going to be like, if this guy can't put any effort into himself, he's not going to put any effort into me,
Mm,
right?
right.
If do you show up in sweatpants at Chabad?
I mean, no.
Did I not ask that question?
No, I don't.
You don't.
I don't think I own a pair of sweatpants.
You're missing out. Quality pair of sweatpants feels amazing. But why don't you show up? Why don't you show up to the pulpit dressed like a schlump?
Right.
Why?
Because
No, I'm
no one's going to
asking.
want to listen. No one's going to want to listen. No one's going to
No
want
one's
the
going to want to
rabbi
listen.
to be a schlump. I got it.
No one takes you seriously.
Right.
And so I think the best version, when someone says just go be yourself, I think what they're saying is like go up to someone, introduce yourself, and just kind of do what you've always been doing. But what you've always been doing hasn't worked for you. And it's because too many people don't show up as the best version of themselves. Now, that's different than being fake, okay? And that's different from having a script. But there is such thing as a better version of Jeremy. And there is such thing as the best version of Rabbi Bernath.
Right.
And those are the versions of ourself that connect.
Do
Can I
you
tell a story about you?
what?
I tell a story about you?
Sure, please.
Okay. So, for those people who don't know, this is not the first time Rabbi and I have met. I trekked up to Montreal. Oh my goodness, it's 2 years ago now. I trekked up to Montreal the first week of January. What, 2 years ago?
Yeah, exactly
Yeah,
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Never met you in person. And you asked me to come to your synagogue on Saturday morning for services. So I did. I trekked to your synagogue. It was 8 degrees Fahrenheit. It was, dude, like my ears fell off in the 5 blocks between my Airbnb and your synagogue. And I wanted to like make a good impression on you because you're a rabbi. And so I showed up at like 9 a.m. You want to tell people why that was a bad idea?
What time did I walk in?
Probably
10:30?
about 11.
Yeah.
So you show up at 11, right? And I'm like, oh, I recognize that beard. That's the guy that I'm doing this conference with. And you have this smile on your face and you're dressed like a rabbi and you shake my hand and you say, here's what you said. You don't remember this, but you said, come with me. I want to show you something. I've never met you in person, but the first thing that you said was, come with me. Let me show you something. And you made me feel like I was part of the inner sanctum. And from then on, you and I were good, right? You and I were good from then on. But you brought from the first minute that I met you, you brought this best version of yourself, which is very different from the version of you that I've met at 3 in the morning, which really, quite frankly, is not very much fun. I'm messing with you,
Right.
but you brought the best version of you, and it inspired me to bring the best version of me. And then suddenly we were having a good time together.
It's interesting that you're saying that. Is first impression only impression? Because that's what it sounds like.
It's a big one. I don't think it's the only one, but it's a big one.
Well,
Look, but let's imagine for a moment, because I know a lot of people here are going to walk into a speed dating event one day, or in fact, I know one person on this call is signed up for a speed dating event, right? Imagine that you're at a speed dating event. You have, depending on the event, 5 to 7 minutes to click with a perfect stranger. They're gonna go on a speed date with probably 5, 10, 15 other people. If you don't make a good impression, are they gonna check the yes box on the sheet?
wow. That's a lot of pressure.
It is. It's why you prepare. When I die on my tombstone, on my tombstone, it's gonna say Jeremy told people to prepare.
That's all you wanted to say?
Jeremy told people to have a mental library. Dress like you're bulletproof, prepare ahead of time, and come in as the best version of yourself. That's what my epitaph is going to say. Because that is the difference between walking into a room feeling like this is going to suck and walking into a room feeling like, you know what? I can do this.
It's interesting because I don't know if I would have remembered our first meeting as vivid as you did, because it's something that you live with on a constant basis,
Yeah.
helping people with their first meetings.
I also remember our first meeting more vividly because for you, you just showed up at shul as Rabbi Bernath, the best version of his rabbinical self. There was nothing out of the ordinary for you
Hmm.
about how you showed up that morning. But I'm used to, showing up at shul and everyone's like, and here is a guy who did it differently. He showed up as the best version of himself. Yeah,
Right.
that's memorable to me. 2 years later, it's still seared in my brain.
It's interesting because if you were to walk in to our shul on a regular Saturday, you would see something different as well. So you happen to be, you walked in before me. But if you were to walk in, I stand in the back of the shul.
You did.
Well, I do always.
And you did that time too.
That's the most important place for a rabbi, in my opinion, in a
Oh,
shul.
you got to tell me why.
It's obvious why.
That's not obvious to me.
The rabbi's got to be with the people, not up at the front. What is he going to do up there? God already has rabbis.
I love that you think that was obvious.
Like, where am I supposed to be?
I feel like
Like,
this is a trick question.
no, no, really, like,
No,
where?
the obvious ad.
If
Look,
you walked in, if you walked into a shul, wouldn't you want the rabbi to shake your hand and say, "Hello, welcome, what's up? You want a coffee?"
I I loved that about you, but I've come to expect that the handshake from the rabbi or the priest or whoever is at the end when you're leaving. That's what I've come to expect.
Mm, got it.
You changed the dynamic. I love that you changed the dynamic. That is a metaphor for why we're having this conversation. Because
And
if you want to change, go.
yes, exactly. And how do we change that dynamic when it comes to dating?
Exactly. I'm glad you picked up on the metaphor. That's where I was going. How do you change the dynamic? You show up as the best version of yourself. You show up as the most interesting version of yourself, and you're not going to wing it.
Got it.
You get out of an experience what you put into it. Look, I don't like scripts. I don't believe in scripts, okay? But I'm going to use the metaphor. If you are getting up on stage as an actor and you don't know what the script is, you're in trouble,
Got it.
okay? You need to know what you're going to say and what you're going to ask, not as a script. But there are going to be times in that conversation, guaranteed, there are going to be times in every single conversation where what happens? The awkward pause. And what you do in that moment, that's going to determine to a large part whether that conversation is going to go well or not.
Okay, let's play it out.
Fine. Exactly.
What do
I
you
had
do?
not, what?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I had nothing to say to you in that moment. I wasn't prepared. And we just looked at each other.
is that okay?
For you and I, it is, but we're not strangers. If you're on a speed date, a little awkwardness is normal. If you're meeting someone at a singles mixer, a little awkwardness is normal. It could even be endearing. But we're not talking about like a little awkward pause, right? What we're talking about is what happens very, very often, which is I got nothing else to say.
Mm.
I got nothing else to say.
And what do you recommend then?
That's what the mental library is about.
You just
The
have
mental
something you
library
bring
is
up.
what?
You bring something up.
Yeah, because you prepared it already. I love the fact, by the way, metaphorically speaking, you have a library behind you, right? If I had a question for you and you didn't know the answer, you can turn
Yeah.
your
Hey, by
chair
the way, this is
around.
not a fake screen. This is my real library.
That's it, yeah. You could turn that chair around, and one of those books
Yeah, and by the way,
has
it's
the answer to my
much
question.
larger than yeah, it's huge.
It's a very impressive library for those who haven't been to his house. Why not have a metaphorical library in your brain where you can check out questions out of that library when you need them?
Right.
Check out answers when you need them. That's what you can use in that moment of awkwardness. But you know what happens to most people when they have an awkward moment? I mean, you do know what happened. Rabbi, what happens to most people when they have that awkward pause?
Well,
Exactly. But what's going on in their brain?
it's scary
Yeah. Why?
because nobody wants to be without what to say.
Yeah. And so
That's
your
the problem.
brain starts working overtime to figure out, oh, shoot, what do I do now?
You know what I love about this having the library? One of
What?
the hardest things when you're dating is not just the awkward pause, but you're so overthinking and worried and have so many things. This way, you're just relaxed. Go to number 47. Boom. Pull it
Boom,
out.
boom. Yeah, it's kind of like that. You're when you're on a date, and I don't care how your brain is wired, typically or divergently. I don't care how your brain's wired. When you're on a date, you're thinking about 1,000 things. You're
Absolutely.
thinking about, does my date like me? What am I going to say? What do I say to what they said? Oh my goodness, the food smells really good. The food smells really bad. Holy cow, this bar smells like old beer. How am I getting home? The weather's turning bad. What's this costing me? I can come up with a million things that are going through my brain when I'm on a date. And that makes it pretty darn hard to be present in that conversation.
Right.
But that's what you want to be. You want to be present.
Right. It's amazing. There are so many questions that are coming in, and I want to get to them. So, what I'm thinking is right now, I like to interrupt this wonderful conversation, and I want to do a rapid fire um, series of questions. Can we do that?
We could, but can we like pull back the curtain for 1 second and
Sure,
like let people in on a little bit of like a secret? It's not a secret, but how this came about.
sure.
So yeah, that day that Rabbi and I met, that night we stayed up till 3 in the morning just talking about like everything and anything. We talked about souls at Mount Sinai and then soul bubbles and right, it was you and me and your wife to some extent and Mark Goldman, the founder of Saw You at Sinai, and some matchmakers. We just talked till 3 in the morning and it was just
Elisa
so
Ben
fascinating.
Shalom. Yeah.
What?
And,
Lisa Ben Shalom was there.
yeah.
Then you and I did the same matchmaking conference in Jerusalem, and we were staying in we shared an Airbnb at Pardes Chana. You and I stayed up the entire night that night,
Was it a
which
full night?
it was a full night. You went to bed for an hour. I did not. I ended up trying to sleep standing up on the railroad between Pardes Chana and Jerusalem. I was a mess for that matchmaking conference.
Shows you for trying to stay in the same Airbnb as me.
I didn't have a choice. And then we did that. Then you and I ran and like our and Ilana and other people, we ran in a singles event in Edison, New Jersey. And I think we stayed up till 2 in the morning. And I love our conversations. It usually ends up with me doing crazy things like committing to a 10-year Talmud project. So sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe these late night conversations with Rabbi Bernath aren't healthy for me. But the idea is I wanted to let other people in on this conversation.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it at a more humane hour.
This is pretty humane.
I
Well,
know.
that's the point.
I know.
Okay, because we could have done it at 2 a.m. and people would have shown up, I bet. Right? You would have shown up if we did it at 2 a.m.
Perhaps. But this is really the continuation of a tradition you and I have, but allowing other people to sort of listen in on it and be a part of it. And I
So
think the
now
more
that
of these that we do, I think we'll even get better at them.
I think now that they're listening in, they have a lot of questions. So I want to rapid fire, which means I'm going to ask you these questions. You have less than 20 seconds to answer each one. And I've got a bunch of people who are neurodiverse that are going to time you.
So meaning you're asking me really good questions and you're forcing me into a short factual answer. Thanks so much.
Correct.
Thanks for making me
Correct.
look like a hypocrite, Rabbi. I appreciate it. Let's do it.
Exactly. This is exactly, but it's enough that our mental library can handle it.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. I'm trying to understand your strategy. When Ilana asked you where you were from, how did you respond to the question and establish a connection there?
I mean, Alana's here. I'm going to hold the baby for a second. You're going to talk about this.
Wait, repeat the question. I
The-
had a
the-
baby sticking her hands in my mouth.
when you and I met, like you and I were total strangers to each other. We met kind of sort of
Kind of at a wedding.
at a pandemic wedding,
And
right?
then started speaking about a month later.
Right. And so,
We were strangers.
we were strangers and you asked me where I'm from and I gave you the answer about being from this small, street, 5 generations of my family have lived on that street because it was 5 generations
Yep.
at that point, right? talk about the meaningfulness of like that versus, oh, I'm from New York, but now I live in California.
It to me, it was like he gave me all these different branches to go off of. I could have gone about his family. We could have talked about my family, where we came from, and we landed on, oh, Washington Heights. That's where my father grew up, and it immediately established this connection. And that connection could have, it could have gone in different ways, but we just bonded so quickly because of that conversation. If he would have just said, I'm from New York, we wouldn't have had anywhere to go.
Hmm.
So, and that was just one example of questions that we asked each other that gave us that opportunity to spark a connection.
It sounds like to me, in AI terms, that Jeremy's really good at prompting,
Good at prompting.
which means that
I mean,
all you have to do
yes.
is be a good prompter, and then the other person, literally the AI, will write out the whole thing for you, will say the whole conversation for you. All you did was some good prompting.
I think that's right. Like human beings are meaning-making machines. If I
Yeah.
give you an answer with meaning, you're going to find meaning in that and want to talk about it. But if I give you an answer that's factual and really devoid of feeling, you're just going to absorb that fact and eventually get bored and move on. And so what I gave Ilana was not facts. I gave them
A
facts that
story.
I gave her a story.
Yeah. Okay, here's the next one. That was too long. That was a great answer, but too long.
Sorry.
No worries. Do you guide clients to know themselves first in their values and important interests and then create relationships?
100% yes. 100% yes. Because, oh, I wish I had the diagram up here. Let's just talk about friendship for a moment, okay? We have what in the program what we call the true friend test. And it's a three-part test. Number one, they share a common interest with you. Number two, they accept you for who you are and vice versa. And number three, you both put equal effort into building it. Okay?
Share
That's what
common
true friend is.
interests, accept each other for who you are, and put an effort to building it. That
You
sounds
gotcha.
like a great,
You
great
gotcha.
recipe.
Great recipe. If you don't know who you are, it makes it really hard to find common interests, and it makes it really hard to accept someone else for who they are because you don't even know yourself.
Let me just understand this. Jeremy, who are you?
I am a nerd at heart. Um, I love hockey. I love reading. I love community. I love sitting in a hot tub and talking to people. I love finding out what people's stories are. Sometimes I like talking and not shutting up.
And Grateful
Um,
Dead.
I love the Grateful Dead and dancing like no one's watching, even though they are, because I'm definitely off tempo because I have none. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a friend. I'm a
Fun.
son.
Got it.
Sometimes I'm unpleasant.
So knowing that is good enough to know who you are.
I think it's certainly a start. I think it's certainly a start because if you look at where my communities are, like we call them tribes in the program. What are my tribes? On Monday, I have the Hot Tub Mastermind, which is a community that I built of like-minded entrepreneurs who sit in a hot tub and talk about like a lot of tax strategy. Okay. But that's a community. Um, and I have a poker community because I enjoy poker. And so a bunch of Israelis have invited me to play poker with them, and that's a community. Um, Usually on Thursday nights, I go to a Grateful Dead jam band community. Saturday morning, I go to synagogue. Not particularly religious, but I go to synagogue just about every Saturday because I love sitting down for a meal with people who have something in common with me. But I have these communities because I know something about myself. I know what I enjoy,
And these
and I
communities
know
fill
I
those
know who I want to
interests.
be around. What?
Right. These communities fill those parts of yourself, those interests, those things, and they spark something about yourself.
Yes, and Lola is asking what my favorite Grateful Dead song is, and it really does change. But I used to sing Ripple to my kids to help them go to bed. Uh, I know your rider is a personal favorite. Yeah, there are too many. There are too many. I love too many Grateful Dead songs.
And Debbie
Great.
asked if she can babysit, and absolutely anytime.
Yes. Come to Irvine,
Here's the
California.
next.
Baby
Here's the
Yes.
next question in
Okay.
this. What's
Yeah.
rapid fire that's not working so well?
Okay.
My challenge is that the person I was dating was neurodivergent, but he never asked me anything about myself, and I was getting annoyed.
Yes. Actually, no, but truth be told, I'm actually friends with a couple um divorce lawyers. And one thing that divorce lawyers like to share with me when I tell them that we work with neurodivergent adults, um, they actually like, I've had multiple divorce attorneys tell me that um, they've had mixed couples, meaning one neurodivergent, one neurotypical, and a big reason why the marriages dissolved was because communication just didn't work. Just didn't work. The neurodivergent person communicated one way, the neurotypical person communicated another way, and they didn't bridge that gap. They didn't bridge that gap.
Got it.
When you talk to somebody and what you're saying isn't absorbed, and they talk to you and what they're telling you isn't absorbed, both of you go to bed feeling pretty not understood, not heard, not seen. And that is a recipe for a relationship that's not going to be particularly happy.
Okay.
Awkward pause. Use your
Awkward
mental
pause
library.
because I'm reading the next question.
Okay.
It's a little longer than the other ones, but I want to read this one. Seems like getting a romantic relationship is trying to attract people to know them. Seems a little selfish or something that needs to have a background code or be an attractive person. Is it just the social development that's not getting any social cues or learning about flirting without being a creep? How to create closeness in a fast way and keep the conversation on?
That was like 10 questions in
I
one.
know.
You're going to give me 20 seconds?
Okay,
How about
well,
you answer it? You start.
um, I'm very interested about the last part of it. Like, do you have any life hacks for creating closeness without conversation?
Do I have any life hacks for, yeah, it's something that neurodivergent people oftentimes struggle with. It's eye contact.
Right.
And
Can you fake
and
eye
people come
contact?
to, what?
Can you fake eye contact?
I don't like using the word fake. I think you can simulate it, and I think that you can also make eye contact in a way that's less uncomfortable, thank you, than what it ordinarily be. I think there's this like feeling amongst people that eye contact means you just need to be gazing at them. Like almost like like staring. And that like if you look away, it's a failure. And really eye contact is almost like a misnomer, right? What's important is connecting eyes, but also disconnecting and then reconnecting and then disconnecting. And then I'm sorry. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
This is what happens when you're live. Unfiltered. Mia, that was amazing. I can't tell you how quickly my mental library is going to have a story about you farting with 47 people on a Zoom.
She's
That's
so
gone,
classy.
that's gone right into my mental library. This story will be told for years.
Okay.
Love you. But can I take a moment and say like
Debbie still wants to babysit.
that is what mental library is about, right? The things that happen in your life that you can talk about. I'm going to talk about the time on a Sunday night. I had 47 people listening on a conversation, and my 4-month-old just ripped tuchus.
It's
That's
amazing.
mental library. It's part of my life now, and I'm going to make it part of someone else's life because it's interesting. And I'm
It's
going to do it, sweetheart, in a way that doesn't embarrass you too badly.
it's gonna bring a laugh or two. There's no
Gonna
question.
this is gonna be part of the speech at your wedding,
I
guys.
was going to say this is going to be part of your bat mitzvah speech.
But I
100%.
heard somebody once say back to back to eye contact that maybe looking at one eye could help.
Some people look at one eye, some people can look at the furrow of the brow, bridge of the nose, even looking at for some people looking at the mouth actually helps because it helps them process the speech. But what's really more important, I think, than just which hack you use is the idea of just looking away so that it's not so intense, right? That's what's so hard about eye contact. Okay, goodbye. That's what's so hard about eye contact for everyone, no matter what your neurology is. It's super intense. You got to look away to break that intensity. And
Right.
that back and forth of that connect, disconnect. That's part of the key to sparking something. So for me, like, what do I do? Like, I'm very conscious of eye contact. And by the way, just because I'm a social coach doesn't mean I love making eye contact. I don't. I'm very cognizant of how intense it is. So you know what I do? I follow the other person's lead. When they're looking at me, I look at them. When they look away, I look away. When they look back at me, I look back at them. That way I'm not making more eye contact than they're making. Right? It's the idea of mirroring. I try to mirror what they do.
That's a really good idea. You just whatever they do, you do the same, and then
Yeah.
it'll look good.
Yeah.
That's a good life hack.
That's my personal hack. I do teach that to our clients.
That's really good. Somebody else asked here. There are many times when a date is all around fantastic, and afterwards you never hear from them again. What do you do?
Move on to the next person. If a day was all around fantastic for you and you're reaching out to them and they're not responding, most likely the date wasn't that good for them. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, what did I do well on this date? But where's the disconnect? Where's my opportunity for improvement? Because clearly it wasn't as good for them as it was for me. And I have to figure out what was that? So I can see what can I do better next time and work on that.
Yeah. Somebody else asks, they really feel like there's not a lot of opportunities for organic opportunities to meet people in the social setting. Do you have any insight into that?
What does organic mean?
I guess well, they started off by saying you met at a wedding. Like that's organic, right?
Yes, that is organic.
Are so outside of just wedding crashing, is there any other opportunity that you
Tons
know
of
of?
opportunity, right? One of the biggest things that we preach to our clients in Social Life 360, have a tribe, have a community, okay? Have people that you spend time with because your beshert may be in that community. Your beshert may be a friend or a relative of someone in that community. That community may just give you stories to tell when you're in a less organic setting, like a speed date or a singles mixer. But if you're not out there in the world and you're sitting at home alone, playing video games, watching TikTok videos, you are not giving yourself any opportunity to meet someone new. You have to be in it to win it. You got to be out there. I can come up with a whole lot more platitudes,
Right.
but that's what it comes down to. You got to be out there. You got to find your place. And it's a big thing in our program, right? Like Alana and I spend a lot of time in the program helping you find your place. Because sometimes it's easier said than done,
Hmm. That's
right?
amazing.
You told me that someone asked about rural.
That's hard.
Rural ain't easy.
No, that's hard. I mean,
Rural ain't
unless you want to date a cow. No, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke.
easy. Alex Rosen wrote, Fight the Time Vampires. Alex, Alex knows. So a time vampire is one of the terms that Ilana and I use to describe things that feel good but don't help you. And that's a lot of video games, that's a lot of YouTube, a lot of TikTok. There is value to, to relaxation.
Yeah,
But there comes a time at which relaxation becomes just stagnation. I just made that up. But
I
I
love
like that.
that.
Relaxation becomes stagnation. I need to write that down somewhere. But it's true, right? We all need to relax every day. But at what point is our relaxation taking away from what we need to do to live our life's purpose, impact the world, meet people, bring light to others?
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes people find themselves in the friend zone when they are seeking a romantic relationship. What's your perspective on that? Can someone shift from friendship to romance?
It happens all the time. And it goes in two directions, right? Sometimes people are friends and become romantic with each other. Sometimes people are romantic with each other and just end up as friends. Um, I was reading this article in the New York Times this week about two colleagues who built a friendship, and then one day, I guess they decided that they were more than friends. It absolutely happens. But there are also times where you build a friendship and that's really all there is. A romantic relationship takes two. A friendship takes two. Both people have to want to be in it for the same reason.
Yeah. How do you help people move past rejection, whether in friendships or dating?
I'm throwing that right back at you. Like, Rabbi, if there's one thing that I know that rabbis do, it's counsel people through the tough times. How do you help people past rejection?
Rejection is tough.
Yeah,
Tough. There's no way to untough eyes rejection. It's
amen.
awkward and it's tough.
Yep.
And you know what I love about that? At least
What?
for a rabbi, for Judaism, struggle is a value.
Ooh, tell me more about that. I don't
For
unpack that for me.
Judaism,
I don't know
struggle
about
is a value.
it. Okay. Tell
So
me.
struggle is good. If the struggle happens, you're like, yeah, that's great. Rejection is one step closer to finding your person. Yay.
That's our philosophy.
Do you believe
It
me?
still hurts.
It hurts. It hurts, but hurts is good. Who said life was supposed to be easy?
Hurt is good in the long run. Doesn't feel good in the moment.
No, definitely not.
But you know what? I'm gonna say it. That's why having mentorship is important. That's why having a rabbi is important. That's why having a priest is important. That's why having us is important. Because on the path of life, really crappy things happen. And if you let that stop you, you are done. And sometimes the easiest way to get back up and be resilient and learn from the experience is to have a mentor who can say, I've seen this a million times. I feel for you, but here's what's coming next. Here's what you got to do.
Right. This is a
You
good
do a
question.
lot of that.
Yeah.
I do a lot of that.
Yeah. Here's a good question that just came in. What is vulnerability? I don't know exactly what that word means. Maybe you know what that means, but what does vulnerability play in creating meaningful relationships? How can people embrace vulnerability in a healthy way?
That's a, I guess it kind of hinges on what the definition of vulnerability means.
Yeah. What does that mean?
I don't know. Can the person who asked the question explain?
Yeah.
I
Can
don't
you
want to
ask
make
us
any assumptions.
what is vulnerability? We'll get back to that because it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. Okay. Um, oh, here's one. With dating apps and social media, people are more connected than ever, yet loneliness is at an all-time high. What do you think is missing from modern social interactions? Why the dating apps and social media, but we're all lonely, or many of us are lonely.
So Shameless plug, Ilana and I have a free training on our website, and we dive into exactly this question. Why does online dating suck, particularly for people who are neurodivergent? You know, I don't think I can do justice to what we spend a whole bunch of time in that training talking about. So
That's interesting. It's so common that that is your opening conversation.
it's not an opening conversation, but it's definitely in there because everyone, uh, everyone that I talked to thought that online dating was going to be the answer for neurodivergent people. Like,
Wow.
how many billions of people are on the internet? Four or five, right? Wow, look at this humongous pool of people that we can meet. And like, we don't need to make eye contact and we get to write and think about our questions and our answers. And people are like, my goodness, this is the answer. And you know what? I tried building two dating websites. I spent tens of thousands of dollars of my own money and my business partner's money trying to build dating websites because there was a time where I was like, oh my God, this is the answer. You just got to build a better mousetrap. You got to build a better dating site. Nope.
Wow.
You
And why
gotta
do
you
you think
got
it didn't work? Like it does make sense from what I now understand about neurodiversity that it would be heaven for dating.
sounds like heaven. I'll give you two
But
big reasons. Number one, hidden rules. Lots of hidden rules to online dating. Lots and lots and lots of them. And after you spend 20 years figuring out the hidden rules, Mazel Tov, now you figured out how to get a date. Well, you just spent the last 20 years spending all your time figuring out how to online date. Now you're on a date. Have you been building your mental library? Have
mm,
you worked on your wardrobe so that you have a nice outfit? Do you know what you're going to ask? Do you know what you're going to say? Have you been part of a community so you have stories to tell? Nope. I just spent the last 20 years learning how to online date. Well, now you got a problem because now you're on a date, but you haven't done any work. That's why I will say there's someone here tonight in this group who's a client of mine, and he said, "Hey, what do you think of these online dating sites?" And my answer was, I'm not going to stop you from online dating, but I'm certainly not going to tell you to do it. What I'm going to tell you is go out into the real world and start meeting people and be the best version of yourself and bring your light and love to the world. And the people who need you, fantastic. And for the people who don't need you, that's a gift. It's a gift. Every no thank you is an opportunity to move on to the next person, just as you said, Rabbi.
I love it.
That's what you said about rejection,
I
right?
love it. Yeah. It's so important. And when you're dating, I always say that dating is the hardest job in the entire world. The result will be the most meaningful, but the process is the hardest in the entire world. There's nothing harder. And so rejection it's hard. It's tough. It's really tough. Speaking of rejection, what do you say about ghosting?
It's not the menschlichkeit thing to do. Don't do it to people.
But what do you say if you've been ghosted? Like how do you deal
Fine.
with that?
It's the 20, this is what's happening in dating these days. It's awful. It's awful. And we tell our clients, don't do it. Be a mensch. Be a good person. If you don't
Right.
want to see someone again, tell them. But that's one of the downsides of dating apps, right? You're chatting with someone, and while you're chatting with someone, they're getting other people in their inbox ready to chat with them. It makes it very, and there's no personal connection there. You haven't met. You don't feel any sense of obligation.
Yeah.
It's just it's just an avatar. It's just a name, right? We treat each other on dating apps in some ways like we're not human. And when we
It's
don't look at each other as humans, we treat each other as not being human, and that's what ghosting is.
not any different than these social settings where you have the guy saying hello to you and they're looking over your shoulder at the same time.
That happens.
Yeah.
That happens. I've heard that from women, right? Guys that I've heard from women. I'm having a conversation with this guy and he's looking for the next best thing.
I'll tell you a secret.
Tell me.
This is my anecdata. That's my term.
Okay.
The worst daters make the best spouses. The best
100%.
daters make the worst spouses.
So you know this, but Alana and I, we go literally around the world talking to matchmakers because we want matchmakers to know that the neurodivergent people that we know, at least, they are the most loyal, caring,
Absolutely.
right?
But
No
they're
one
not
is
going to be
more
good
loyal.
daters. They're
What?
not going to be the dater, the guy, the person, the it's not going
Rico
to happen.
Suave. They're not going to be Rico Suave.
Rico Suave. I don't even know what that is.
What was the guy's name? Fabio.
I don't even
Not
know
going to
what
be
that is.
Fabio. But they are going to be very loyal. And Alana and I are trying to get matchmakers to open their eyes to this.
So this is so good because I think about this so much. How do we because I really see that really bad daters become really good spouses. How do we make this and this work? Which means get them from the introduction to the some people. I think some people can relate to this that are listening right now. They're like, I just find me the person and I'll just get married. Like I don't want to go through the whole process. I want to go from here to knowing them very well and just getting married, and that's the end of it. How do we create this middle without having the middle?
We got to get more people to show up as the best version of themselves. We can only control us, right? I hear people, tell me all the time, well, we got to get other people to be more understanding. We got to get other people to be more inclusive and empathetic. Yeah, I mean, I would love that. But we don't control other people. We control ourselves. We control how we show up. We control the attitude with which we show up and where we show up and what we do when we show up. And if we show up as the best version of ourselves with the philosophy that we're going to meet new people, and sometimes they're going to be right for us and sometimes they're not, we can make progress.
But it still doesn't take away from the fact that you have to play the game. I hate this version. You got to play the game. But because, and I see a lot of people who dated for a long time get into serious relationships and they're still treating it like they're dating. And everything that you need to know for dating is the opposite of what you need to know for a long-term and healthy relationship. So I would rather people not become good daters, not become good at this, and actually go right to the meaningful relationship, which I think a lot of people who classify themselves as neurodiverse can relate to that.
Yeah,
So
that's why I
how do we
don't.
navigate this crazy world?
I mean, that's my life's work. That's what I do. That's what Social Life 360 is about. It's what Alana and I spend 7 days a week helping our clients with. That's it. Not being good daters, being the most interesting version of themselves. That's our calling in life. That's why we're
Wow.
having this conversation, Rabbi, with you and with this community.
Wow.
What I would tell people is if you want my thoughts in a more coherent version than what we shared here, my website has the free training. It's about 35 minutes. It's a really well organized training. All you got to do is put in your name and your email address. You can spend 35 minutes kind of watching a much less stream of consciousness version of this conversation. Do that. And at the end of it, we offer a 90-minute free strategy session. We have an amazing neurodivergent coach actually up in Canada. She's in Guelph.
Oh, nice.
And she will give a family 90 minutes at no charge to understand what do you want from your social life, where are you getting stuck, and can we help you?
What is that website? Someone just asked.
It should be actually be like if you look at my
Oh yeah,
name,
it says right over here.
my best
MyBestSocialLife.com.
my best social life. I'll put it in the chat.
MyBestSocialLife.com. This has
Yeah.
been obviously
Here's what I want to know, Rabbi. I want to ask everyone who's kind of watching, like, if this was a meaningful conversation and you want to hear me and Rabbi and maybe Ilana do this again and continue the conversation, maybe just write yes in the chat box. Someone wrote no.
Okay, I want more than a yes. I want to know what was your nugget? What are you taking home from this?
Okay.
And I'll read out those nuggets. I'm so happy for your yeses and your 1,000 times yes, but I want to know a nugget. What are you taking? If there's one thing that you're taking home with you from this conversation today, what is it? And I want to read them out.
Okay. Everyone take like 20 seconds and write sort of your learn from this.
The struggle is worth it. The struggle is worth it. Mental library. Yes, I'm not alone.
That's a
Yes,
good feeling. That's
yeah,
community, right? That's what a tribe is about. That's community, that feeling of not being alone. I love
wow.
that.
Yes, it's good to get help. Wow. Keep getting back up when you fall down in this social journey. Yes. Finding who I am. Yes. Preparing questions ahead of time. Fantastic. Finding connection and community. Somebody said a private message. I felt guilty not working hard enough to communicate with the neurodivergent date that I had. I feel so much better now. That's so amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that. That
You know
was
what
a
I'm going
great.
to do, Rabbi, I do want people to watch the training before they kind of sign up for that consultation with our team. But if it's okay with you, I'm going to put the link in the chat.
And I'll send it out as well to everyone by email. How about that? Just give it
Okay,
to me and I'll send it
there
out
it
by
is.
email because I have everyone's email here.
So I put it in the chat.
Okay, great.
After you watch the training, or at least if you're going to sign up for the consultation to talk with our team, with Cecile, about what you want in your life, you can use that link to sign up for it, but I still
Thank
do
you.
want you to watch the training.
I'm getting such good nuggets here. When people ask you for a date, do not ask them to pencil themselves into your calendar.
That's a good
Manners
one.
matter.
Can I tell you something, Rabbi? As much as like that is a very as much as that's like a very practical piece of advice, those are important. We had a client, a guy who I love very, very deeply, who was not getting to second dates. And we kind of like did a deep dive into what's going on. And we realized it's a guy who's going on dates with women. He was splitting the cost of first dates with women. And that's a no-no.
And no one told them
And no one
that's
told him. And you know what? The next time he went on a date and he paid for it, he ended up going on 5 dates with this woman.
wow.
And he felt so empowered, by the way, that he broke up with her
Don't
because
go Dutch
they're
on a
not a match.
first. Wow. Don't go Dutch on a first date.
Do not go Dutch on a first date. Not a male-female first date. There's a societal expectation. There's symbolism in paying for the date. There's
Wow.
symbolism.
What if she insists?
I actually had a client ask me that very question. In the newest version of our first date module, I actually wrote an answer. If she insists forcefully enough, you let her.
Still don't.
No, you let her.
You let her. Okay.
There,
I think there's
what,
an
wait, Ilana wants to say something
I
about
think,
this.
sorry. I think there's an opportunity to say, I'll get this one and an entry into the next state that you can get the next one.
That's nice. That's a great opportunity.
I
Ilana just said,
love that
yeah,
answer.
I'll get this one and you can do the next one.
I love that answer.
That so it kind of gives the entry into the second date. I love that. Here's another some great nuggets. Preparedness. This wasn't interesting, and I thought you didn't use statistics to categorize people into groups. Oh, okay, great.
I don't
Taking
have statistics to do any categorization.
yeah, it's all anecdata anyway.
Anecdata.
Talking is silver, listening is gold. It makes me feel a bit better about being a good listener as opposed to be a great conversationalist. We
Nice.
need more good listeners in the world.
Amen.
Otherwise, the two of us can't talk because we're just going to talk to the
Amen.
wall. Though Jews have been talking to the wall for a long time. Jeremy and I went to talk to the wall together.
We did talk to the wall together. We did. We're talking about the Western Wall, folks. We
Yeah.
went to Jerusalem together.
We were at the Western Wall together and Ilana as well. It was a beautiful, beautiful day in
It
Jerusalem.
was.
Mental library and don't date just to date. Bad daters make great partners. Okay,
That might
another
be, by the way, that might be like my nugget.
really?
Yeah, I like that. I really appreciate that.
I see it so often.
It gave voice to what I know to be intuitively true.
I see it so often. It's my anecdata.
Love it.
A hidden rule. Okay. I wonder why it's called Dutch. Maybe they invented that custom. That's great.
It's a great question. Why do they call it going Dutch? I don't
Yeah.
know.
We didn't talk about this, but this is a takeaway. Same-sex dating works a little bit differently. Yes. Don't go double Dutch on a first date unless you're like two men or two women not in a relationship.
Wait, I thought double Dutch was jump
This
rope.
is so confusing for me.
Isn't double Dutch jump rope? Right? Yeah. I see some head nods.
Yeah,
Double Dutch is
okay.
jump rope. Single Dutch, just Dutch, is splitting the bill.
Okay. Nothing against the Dutch.
I don't know if it has anything to do with the Dutch.
No.
Dutch, Dutch chocolate has nothing to do with Dutch.
Maybe it came from, I don't know. Anyway.
Dutch is the name of the process of making the chocolate.
Mm. There are people out there. Here's a takeaway. There are people out there that simply want platonic relationships. When you bring up romantic question, they cut you off. How do you ask that without cutting them off to see what they want in life? You met them hanging out with a couple of times. How do you ask without ruining the friendship? Oh, that's a
That's a
bigger
bigger
question.
question than
Yeah,
that's gonna be the lead off question
of the
next time
next one.
we do this.
The next one. This has been absolutely amazing. This has really been amazing. Jeremy, I'm happy that we were able to just have a conversation like we usually do, and then just everybody else can listen in.
All right. Should we do it again?
Yeah, why not? Sounds like a good idea.
We'll do it again.
This has been just absolutely wonderful. I want to thank you and Ilana and Mia in the back over there for being with us
Hold on. We'll get him back here to say
and
goodbye.
for sharing your wisdom, your warmth, and you even got a babysitter out of the deal.
Yeah.
Bye,
Ooh.
everybody. You want to say goodbye to everybody? Bye. Have a
Bye,
great night,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a great night. Thank you so much.